Hello, everyone. Welcome to Commander's Pod. My name is Duncan. I'm joined by Sloan.
Hello.
And Jeff.
What's up?
And we thank you for joining us again today. We have a few subjects we want to discuss with you. We want to talk about some corrections. Yes, we do make mistakes, and I want to talk about that and go over them. We're going to talk about tales from the table, things that happen to us. Actually, this one's going to be about something we all three played a game together for once. We're going to talk about things that don't do what you think they do. We're going to talk to Aggro Jeff, and we're going to talk about how much interaction should you run in a deck. I think that's a good one. And we're also going to talk about Assassin's Creed. What do we think of it? What are we looking forward to? Do we care? So, first things first, corrections. When we were talking about when a player dies, we said that bribery, or I specifically said that bribery effects end when the player dies and that original owner gains control. This is not true at all. And I got this information from Pleasant Kenobi from one of his videos, and I apologize for passing that falsehood on to you guys. I thought it was a reliable source. It was not. The actual rules use bribery as of an example of ways that does not work. So if I had just read that blurb from the rules, I would have known. But so I apologize for that. But just for clarity, bribery effects do not go back to the original player. They will just exile those things when the player dies. So moving on from that unpleasantness. So we got to play the precons the other day from Modern Horizons 3.
We did.
Yep. We were wanting to do this for a while. Jeff, you got them.
Yep.
And didn't touch them. He just sleeved them up. We played them as is. And we were just like, let's play the pure decks as is. And we all kind of...
Yeah, old school Magic.
Yep. We played a couple games. We each played different ones.
Right. Yeah, we took turns and kind of switched up which decks we played.
Right. So we all got a little taste of several of the decks. And so what were you guys' feelings on that? What were your thoughts?
Well, I'll let Jeff go first since they're his decks, and he probably...
I love that type of Magic. I think it's great. It's not overpowered. You're playing with cards that are just okay. Some are straight bad. But it's kind of fun because everything's balanced. And you have to figure out what to do. The games take a little bit longer. You have to think through what you're going to do. And you have to figure things out because you don't have what word am I looking for? You don't have the consistency that you necessarily would normally build into your deck to do exactly what you want. So you kind of have to do what's better than bad.
Right.
That's it. You just kind of have to make the best of a bad situation.
So the decks were commander decks. I mean, technically.
Yep. Yep. By definition.
So my problem with them was that they felt like too bad. Like they didn't do a good enough job of making them feel more succinct, which we've seen in the past.
I think there was one exception to that.
Right, which I'm getting to. For the most part, I played the energy deck and I played the Termagant or whatever it's called deck. Termagant deck. There you go. The energy deck
can't play it.
The energy deck, I think personally, was the best put together out of the four. And I think part of the reason why is because there's not a lot of good energy cards to begin with. So they made some for this set and put in that deck, and they were actually good. One actually is an artifact that I put in my Prosper deck because it's so good. But the overall synergy of the decks I felt like was kind of lackluster, and it was too clunky, except for the energy one. I felt like the energy one did really good when I played it without really knowing what it was because the theme was so well done and it was very to the point. You want to get energy out, you want to do stuff with energy, you want to get as much energy as you can, just develop energy and then use it to do gross things.
And that deck definitely did that.
Yeah, it did that.
And I would agree that deck is the best built out of all of them as far as just out of the box.
When I played the Eldrazi deck, I feel like it also did what it did.
So I was going to say, that's the other one where what you saw is what you got. It was Eldrazi. Yeah. They weren't the good Eldrazi for the most part. There was a lot of bad Eldrazi in there that I'm like, they just made this so they could make a deck.
Yeah, like when I got, there's one of the Eldrazi that you take counters off of something, and as many counters as you take off of that creature, now you get to use that as mana to cast something else.
Right.
So I cast a 10 cost Eldrazi, but all it was a big Eldrazi that taps for another big vanilla Eldrazi.
Right.
They didn't have any abilities on them. And so if you were building this deck yourself, you're probably taking that out and putting something in that does something.
Right. And
Other
I
than
felt
big
like
vanilla
most
creature.
of the stuff in there made Eldrazi spawn. That seemed to be like the overlying theme. Just make a ton of Eldrazi spawn.
There was that sub theme, yeah. But when I played it, I didn't make too much spawn. I made giant creatures that you guys had to deal with.
Yeah, that's true. And so for me, I do feel like the energy deck's the best synergy.
Out of the pre-coms.
Now, the Eldrazi deck technically has the synergy. It's slow, it's clunky, and it's a lot of the times you're looking at what you can get out, and it's not very good.
Right, and that's it. I think that was the downside with Eldrazi, like Jeff said, because they're such vanilla Eldrazi's, as opposed to the energy deck where like everything I did created energy, which let me do more stuff. So even if it wasn't a great card, the fact that it was producing energy is what mattered, right? Like that's like I had at one point this little 2-drop dude wherever he attacked, I get 2 energy. And then I can pay 2 energy and flicker them basically. So I would attack with somebody. If they wanted to like block them to try to kill them, sure, I just spent the energy that I just got. But if they didn't and they let me hit them for 1 or 2, I got to keep the energy. So I'm accumulating energy. So
And there was one creature in particular that we could not get rid of.
it was that guy.
It was, you pay the 2 energy and it just like...
he would flicker
it. And then, okay, what I was trying to do didn't work.
Right.
Yeah, but I also think there's a style issue here too. Like, I didn't mind playing Eldrazi, and I thought it played really well. I mean, it controlled that game. If it hadn't been for that one card, I definitely would have won that game.
Right.
And I enjoyed playing those big Eldrazi. That was fun. But if it's not something you enjoy doing, getting out a ton of mana and playing big creatures, and
I don't mind doing that. Like, that's fine. But when I played that deck, I'm like, okay, I can cast for 6 this 2/5 that when it dies gives me an Eldrazi. Who cares? 6 mana for that garbage?
well, and to be fair, Duncan was pretty annoyed the entire time we played the commander decks because you're very used to playing bigger cards than
I
there were
don't
in
care.
those
No,
decks.
but I don't care about playing bigger cards. I want the cards to matter, and none of the cards in my hand matter.
When I say bigger, I mean more efficient.
Splashy.
Like you're not playing a 4-drop that taps for 2 mana, right? You're playing a 1-drop that taps for 1 mana and 2 drops that might get you 2 lands.
I mean, 1-drops that tap for 1 mana are common cards. Why are you giving me things that are worse than that in a deck? Like that's,
right. I think that
I
was...
enjoyed the lack of the fast mana.
But I would say I don't care about fast. I don't care about the decks being fast or I literally don't care. My whole thing is like, why is this in here was the question. Like, and with the energy deck, I didn't really run into many cards where I'm like, why is this in here? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, all those cards made pretty good sense on why they're in that deck. They're producing energy, or they have abilities that you pay energy into and they get to do something. Like, so they all made sense for why they're in there. But there were the other like the Termaggoyf deck. I'm like, why is this in here? Like, this is absolutely useless. It doesn't benefit
I will
anything.
agree with you. The Dissa, I think it's Dissa, is the commander.
Yeah.
And I think that's because we understand what cards you could play in that type of deck where you're bringing things back from the graveyard. And so that is the one deck you could definitely upgrade very easily and definitely needs to be upgraded.
No, I would say the worst of that is the Omo.
I think we only played it once.
No, but I've talked to other people who have played it. So here's the funny thing, right? The whole time I'm going, okay, these things get everything counters. This deck must have cards that care about, because now you've got all creature types. Maybe they care about merfolk, or they care about, mercenaries, or they care about something. There was nothing. There was absolutely nothing that cared. And then there was some...
Not completely true. The Locust lands,
so the lands, that's what I was about to say.
Everything lands matter.
Everything lands matter. And the whole point, I've talked to other people, the whole point is to get out that one Locust land that says you tap for as many Locust lands as you control, and that you get tons of mana.
Or the Tron lands.
Right. Well, whatever. But the point is, that's the only thing. And here's the funny part I have not told you guys yet. Remember that win I had on that?
Yeah.
And I played the card that said put a fate counter on target thing, and then you can pay 5, tap it, sack it, and anything it doesn't have that counter dies. And I'm like, oh, finally something.
Oh, but they
that
didn't
cares.
have the counter. Everything doesn't give them a counter.
No, it doesn't give them a fate counter.
So
it
you
only gives them
cheated.
every creature type and every land type. So my win was not even a win.
Okay,
the only synergy I found outside of lands wasn't even synergy. It's hot garbage.
So the Eldrazi and the energy, I feel like, did pretty well.
Yeah,
I feel like
the energy did very well. The Eldrazi had some synergy, but still was like a good couple steps below
Right.
the energy.
Like I feel like
other than those, the other 2 decks had nothing in them that cared about anything.
I feel like
That's not true.
That's hyperbolic at best.
The Termagoyf deck did have things because I've gone through it. I actually, on my version of that deck, I took it apart and rebuilt it, and I still didn't like it. But it has things that care about Goyfs and Termagoyfs
Well, I got
and
some big
Lurgoyfs.
Termagoyfs out when I played it.
Yeah,
right.
But I mean,
So-
there is some stuff in there that cares. The everything deck does not care about anything but lands. The everything counters on the creatures are stupid the way it's built and do absolutely nothing.
yeah, I mean,
that is a hot take for sure.
I would
I don't know that I
say
completely
that
disagree.
the energy deck was the most synergetic and probably would perform the best consistently, just
Right out of
because
the box.
right out the box, just because of the
There's
way
an
it's
infinite
built.
combo in that deck as built.
Right.
You can have infinite energy.
Right. So there is
You can tell which ones are the combo players too.
so I think that deck by far takes the cake for these 4. Like you said, I think Eldrazi had a theme. I just feel like they did it poorly. Like,
But there were payoffs. You could
Sure.
get to something in the Eldrazi deck and be like, yes.
When I played the Eldrazi deck, it owned that game other than that one card, which apparently we did wrong. So it would have won that game, and it controlled it from beginning to end, if you recall.
Yeah.
I mean, I was
you
stomping
got
But that
much
was also-
better cards than I got when I played that.
that was also the one.
That's the thing about these commander decks is it's not consistent.
But still, with the ones you played, I'm like, that is way too much mana for way too stupid a payoff.
But that was also the game we didn't play the energy deck. I bet you if the energy deck would have been in that game would have been different too.
Oh, yeah. No, very
because
much
that was
so.
the one game. That was a game we didn't
The
play.
energy
But-
deck is not fair with those other 3 decks.
Yeah, and the only reason why I bring up that I feel like they didn't do a great job with building at least the other 3 was just because we've had precons in the last year that they built that were really well done. Again, not overpowered powerhouses, but still built well that had a theme, and you could tell the theme right out the box what it was.
Yeah.
So it's not like they can't do that. We know they can.
And for most, and it's true of the Lurgoyf deck. For most decks that the precons they build, what I find is there's 2 themes in the deck because you can swap out commanders,
Right.
and so one's for one commander and one's for the other. But as built, you end up with, well, these care about the other guy who I can't
That's right.
get to, except if I randomly get to him. So, but I felt like the Lurgoyf deck had that. Eldrazi only had the one theme.
But it had the other commander cared about spawns. And when
But it's still Eldrazi.
yeah, but
only
it
has-
gave all those spawns plus something and Annihilator 2.
which that
So
I think
it
that
might
would have been
actually
the better one to play.
It might actually be better to play that as a
we didn't
commander
try
out
that.
of the box.
Right.
But
The other energy commander, I think, was pretty similar. I think the one that they actually gave you was
Right.
best.
And I'll also tell you, so what I did with my energy deck when I got it is I took it out and I took my Dr. Lee deck because that's an energy deck.
Right.
And the funny thing is there's almost no crossover. There's so many things you can take from the 2 decks and just put together and make one cohesive deck.
yeah, so $100 you can have a playable deck.
Yeah.
If you buy a $60 commander deck and a $40 commander deck, you have a pretty good commander deck
Yeah.
for $100.
Yep.
You can't beat that. That's good value.
Yeah.
I would also say, look, sometimes your goal is really well built decks out of the box that you can play. Sometimes, Magic is going to get and have a little fun. And let's be honest, the Dissa deck, the Termagoyf deck, that's a fun deck. That's designed to make people who used to play Tarmogoyf, and it was like $100 card. I think it was more than that. It was a very expensive card. And now you get to play it as a token. That is a great idea. And people love that. And it's nostalgic. And I think, hey, kudos for doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
it doesn't play that well out of the box. Fix it if you want. It's a fun, casual commander deck because you're getting to play old school Tarmogoyf and it's nostalgic. That fits casual. And then Two, you got this deck where they go, okay, let's just do something weird. Let's do everything counters. It's very weird. We've never had it before. Let's do everything lands. Let's let people play these big mana stuff. That's very casual Commander. I think that's fun. I agree. It's a challenge to play that deck.
That deck is hot garbage. That deck is only built so that you can make it better. That's the only reason it exists.
Well, let's agree it's hot garbage. The point is, it is a cool idea that they're putting out there into the world. Now you get to mess with it and make it better because there weren't like everything counters before.
I don't know why though. They could have put all the lords in there, and the lords then make your everything better.
100% they could have, but you can do that too.
And then the lords are cheap. There's no reason they couldn't have reprinted them.
I don't know why they didn't do that. I don't know. I haven't played the deck enough either.
I mean, here's the thing. Think about just adding Krenko to that deck.
Yeah, so.
I mean, it's not the right color, but I'm just like something like that. It's just like.
Well, I mean, I think
that would be ridiculous. But I mean, Lord of Atlantis or something.
To counter, I guess Jeff's point is, yes, I think it's good for them to try to bring back things or try new things, but if I'm going to spend $50 on a deck that's supposed to be somewhat good and playable, $60 on a deck that's supposed to be somewhat good and playable, and it ends up not being good at all or playable, I'm going to be upset instead of them doing it a little bit better. If I'm paying $60 for a deck, let's say I go for we'll do the Termagoyf deck because that one's, no one really has too much opinion on that one. I think we only played it twice, but the Termagoyf deck, for example, if I'm paying $60 to play that deck and I pull it out of the box and I sleeve it up and I shuffle it up and I play a couple of games with it and it's just like, it's not enjoyable. It's not fun out the box because the issue is I just spent $60 and I feel like I'm getting nothing for my $60.
Yeah. And I feel
that's the feel bad part about it. I understand like bringing back maybe old creatures and stuff like that. Again, kudos to Magic for trying to bring back nostalgia and drawing back those people who've been playing since the 90s, I guess, with Termagoyfs. But like at the end of the day, if I'm paying $60 for a product and it's like I actually have to invest more money just to make this playable, I would be more upset than I would be happy.
Yeah,
because I'd be like, why? Why? I could have just went and bought this singleton and then built a better deck for less.
No, I don't think you absolutely could not. I think the counter argument is,
I absolutely could build changelings.
I bought 2 boxes. I got about the value that I paid for the boxes. Maybe you could argue a little bit more. Those commander decks, the value in those commander decks was way above what you paid for them. You got way more than $60 worth of cards.
Yeah, I'm not
in those
talking
commander
about the
decks.
actual value of the cards.
I'm saying that's a counter argument to what you're saying.
No, it's not, because I bought the deck to play the game, and the deck that I bought is one of the ones that's not good.
And that's your opinion. And my opinion is that
I think
got
most
the
people
value.
say that.
You got the value, more than $60 worth of cards. Now make some changes, and you could have a playable deck.
To Sloan's point, when you buy a pre-con, it's supposed to be ready to go.
Pre-constructed deck that's good to play. That's what it's supposed to be.
You know, only 2 out of the 4, if you take 4 people and they each bought a different one of those, only 2 out of the 4 got something playable. And one of them it's way more playable. The other one it's somewhat playable. And then the other 2 players got hot garbage.
Guys, we play Commander all the time. There is not a world where we play where you could take the amount of Commander decks you could open up out of a box and actually play with other Commander players, even a casual setting, is very, very, very low.
That's not true. There are many people that's all they do.
They wouldn't be able to play in any of the games we play.
No, for sure. But
and I haven't seen very many games where that would work.
This is where we talked about that other side of Commander, which I call EDH, where it's the old school. They don't want high power. They don't want super swingy. They want just...
And I think these decks, I disagree with you. I think these decks would do fine. Maybe Omo not, but the other decks I think would do fine in that type of power level.
Yeah, in that type of power level. But for the majority of us players that aren't that we want actual playable decks, it's also not fair if you make 2 of the decks playable and 2 of them aren't. So let me rephrase that. One of the decks was not playable, Omo. The Lorgoyf deck, if you got good cards, you could get good stuff that you could play.
Yeah, I did pretty good when I played it.
So that one, you have something. But then the other 2 are still far and above the other ones, and then the energy is like
The energy was super consistent. I never had something in my hand where I was like, this card should never be. Every card that I drew and I went to play, I was like, this is actually a good card. Like I even played the giant Leviathan that let me bounce all of your guys' stuff, including all my stuff, but it bounced all creatures on the field back to their understanding. Like, and I already, by the time I played him, I already had 18 tokens or whatever, and I had an infinite loop going at one point where I just got infinite attack phases because I had enough attack. So like there was stuff where I feel like, in my opinion, and again, I'm not talking about going to a tournament and opening up one of these precons and playing in a CDH tournament. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about if I bought these 4 decks and I sat down and I got to play all of them a bunch of times and I looked through all the cards, I would feel like Duncan is saying, one of them is just not really that great. They introduced a great idea, and I feel like if they wanted to do that, they could have done that just by releasing the cards instead of building a whole deck around it that they didn't do anything with. Like, you created this idea of an everything deck, and it got people thinking, oh man, I bet you they're going to do a bunch of lords in here and be really cool because you have like this bird that's also a merfolk, that's also a lizard, and now it gets +8 because I have these other, like, that's a great, like, they didn't have any of that. Like, they had it based off of 1 or 2 lands. And so my point is that at the end of the day, the actual value of the card, sure, you got your money back, but that's not why I'm buying the precon. I'm buying the precon, or the most people are buying the precons because they want a deck that's playable and fun to play out the box without having to construct it or spend more money to make it playable.
And that's where I disagree with you. I think a lot of people are buying it for the value, and I also think our standard is way too high on this. I don't know of any commander set that's ever come out where all 4 of the commander decks were as good as each other. Typically,
Literally
there's 1 or 2 that are much better. If you talk about the one that just came out, you're talking about the dinosaurs and the elves?
Ixalan Lost Caverns.
Dinosaurs and elves were amazing.
Merfolks.
Pirates were not nearly as good as the other 2.
but they were
synergetic. It made sense. Every card in there made sense.
And then what was the 4th deck?
It was pirates, it was merfolks, it was dinosaurs, and then it was
Vampires.
And the
Again,
vampires,
I don't know if
again,
vampires
it was
were
that
good.
was very good.
But again, that's very easy. Why?
Okay, Doctor
Because they're
Who.
typal.
The
Doctor
4
Who.
decks were all playable. Fallout, the 4 decks were all playable.
Well, I don't know. I don't think they were that bad. And I'm
And
actually
especially in a
I'm
premium
excited
set where
about
you're paying
Outlaws of
$60.
Thunder Junction, all 4 decks were good. All 4.
I never played them, so I don't know.
I just bought one because I'm good to get some of the Assassin's Creed stuff, because there's stuff in there for Assassins that's really good. So I bought the precon, and even the precon's good. I went through it the other day when I came in, and it's a good precon.
Well, then good on Magic.
Well, and
if they
I
made
will
all those
also
good
say
commander decks.
the
That's great.
good precons is a new thing.
Yes,
For years, they were
100% true.
bad. They were
Yes.
just bad.
They were terrible.
And then they've gotten better. So I guess our standards have maybe risen a little bit.
But-
if you compare them
but
to the old
recent-
ones, it's
yeah,
probably
100%.
But recent,
that's
I
true.
would say even within the last 4 years, they've gotten way better. So recent is kind of a relative term, but yeah, I would say if you look at the last sets of precons that they've done for Magic and you put them up against these ones, there was definitely a feels bad, I feel like, for 2 of the decks if you're looking at trying to open the box and play it.
But I would tell you, I do think the energy deck was probably the best one of any of those sets we mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, the energy deck did great. I would say that the Merfolk deck from Lost Cavern of Ixalan would probably potentially put in its place. And I think even this Outlaws, which is the one that I bought for Thunder Junction, the Outlaws one is really good synergy in it, especially because it has the one guy
So
in
I
that
will
turns
also, now
treasures.
that I'm thinking about it, so not all the Outlaw decks were that good.
So
But they were better, I think.
But
than
I
these.
think they were
at
all
least had some synergy.
It's they were all themed. My point is they were themed better. Like
Yeah.
they had a point and then they kind of stuck to it.
Right.
Like they.
But I mean, we've
So-
kind of beat this subject to death. But the one thing I wanted to point out at the end. So the funny thing about this whole set, Modern Horizons 3, right? At the beginning, everybody's talking about Ulamog, right?
yeah, they'll draw.
And then what ends up being the problem but Nadu? This bird.
Which we
this
talked
bird,
about.
which I blame on you, Jeff.
We
because
talked about it in
heard
that
you
session.
Wizards talked to you, heard you say something about birds. Just birds are jank and birds. And Nadu is their revenge, I believe, on Jeff. And then the precons, everybody's hyped up on Eldrazi precon. You couldn't touch it.
Yeah.
It was gone the first day.
Right.
It was just gone. And then the best precon is the energy one.
Yeah.
I just think it's kind of funny.
But the
how
value is still in the Eldrazi, which I
for
think is
sure.
why they sell out. But no, yeah, I think we talked about it in one of our Commanders pods that it's don't freak out about the cards you think are powerful because it's always the one you don't see coming.
Yeah.
That is end up being the problem, which is exactly what happens. So.
Right. And the energy one was not really. People are like, oh, they just did energy. It's cool. They're bringing it back. But I don't think there was as much hype as the Eldrazi. And that's the one. But let's quickly talk about how much interaction should you run in a deck. And I have this as the counterspell because I think we all have different ideas on this.
Yeah, well, I mean, define interaction. Are we defining interaction as anything you're doing to another player from counterspells to
Counterspells, removal,
Okay.
board wipes,
Well, I mean, being the blue player, Duncan, what are your thoughts on interaction?
as much as you can fit in there. Just
Unbelievable.
merciless.
Just counter
Yeah.
everything.
Why do you need creatures when you have removal?
Yeah.
That's my question.
Yeah, I don't need defenders. I just need you not to have attackers, right?
Yeah. That is my defender. So I would say as many as you can get. I think, Jeff, what would you say?
I mean, old school, probably a lot of my decks, probably 10 single target removal, 5 board wipes. But now I think, depending on what, it's really meta dependent because you guys tend to do more combo-y stuff. Board wipes not necessarily as important, but I think board wipes have definitely become more prevalent where I could see someone going 7 or 8 single target removals and then 7 or so board wipes, maybe 8, and going more like that. And then also in the single target removal, there's definitely been a change to how many things you can target. So for instance, old school, you might play a Swords to Plowshares, which can exile a creature, but it can't do anything about an enchantment or an artifact or a land. And now you're seeing the meta of overall casual EDH go more towards the idea that whatever card I play as my single target removal, it has to be able to target multiple things.
Oh, no. If you are playing white and you aren't playing both Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares, you're doing it wrong because the exile effect is way better than
I'm not saying you
Destroy.
don't play those, but what I'm saying is now when you're looking at single target removal, you used to be able to look more at like, this can remove a creature, this can do this, and now your single target removal has to, some of it at least. Swords to Plowshares is just too much value at 1 mana. But the rest of your stuff, you really want it to be able to target multiple things because you don't know what the problem's going to be.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I mean, when I go to look at removal, there's a couple of things I look at. I try to see is there any just net positive removal, like a Cyclonic Rift, right? That's a net positive removal in my mind because I'm getting rid of all of your stuff. I'm keeping all my stuff.
Or like the white ones that say destroy all non-token or token
Right.
creatures.
You know,
depending on
there's
what
a
you got.
black removal where it says destroy all non-enchantment creatures. So, you know, if I have that in my enchantment that I run.
the Kindred Dominance.
Yeah, so, you know, I always try to look for, is there a way for me to get a net positive removal where that's broad, board white? And then I try to think of my theme and see, can I get any removals that add to my theme? So one that I was going back and forth on for my Prosper deck is Blood Money. It's expensive. It's 7 mana. However, destroy all creatures, create a tap treasure token for each creature destroyed this way. So it's like, okay, so I'm getting a crap ton of potentially tap treasure tokens for everything that's dying, including my own stuff. So I might lose, 3 creatures, but I'm getting back maybe 10 or 12 treasure. I'm netting positive mana, and it allows me to rebuild my board on my next turn really quickly because I have all this mana now to use, right? So I always try to look for things that are going to be net positive when it comes to removal. Of course, there's certain colors where there's staples where it's just like, yeah, you got to have that in there, like white with Swords to Plowshares and Path to Exile. Blue, Cyclonic Rift, if you can afford it. I know it's a $70 card, but if you have one or you can afford it, or if your group's okay with proxies, that's a great one to always proxy because it's such a good removal. Because not only is it single target, but it's also everything with the overload cost. Vandal Blast is another one. Speaking of artifacts, where it's 1 red to get rid of a single artifact, or overload it, destroy all artifacts your opponents control. So there's
4 and a red.
Yeah, 4 and a red. I'm sorry, overloaded red of 4 and a red. So I try to look for things that are going to be on theme for removal or going to try to be net positive. And
But
then
how many do you play?
So when it comes down to it, man, I would probably say about a handful of each is what you're looking for. So I would say about 4 to 5 single target, about 4 to 5 board wipes. If I'm going blue, I probably won't look so much for like destruction and stuff because I'll go more counter heavy. So, but it depends on what colors I'm running. But generally speaking, I would say between board wipes and single target, you should be no less than 10-ish, 9-ish, 10-ish probably. And then kind of go up from there, depending on what your theme is too.
Right.
You know?
Now, there are a lot of play groups out there that run almost no interaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
For
know,
sure.
so I mean, we're not telling you need to change your ways. That's a different style of play. If that's the way your group is, good on you. But I think with the way that the meta is going, the way their cards are coming out, you're gonna find you're gonna have to. And especially if you want to play with other people besides your pod.
Yeah,
that
because
you're
there's
used to.
always a problem. Like a lot of people think, oh, that person has 10 things going on. Oh no, they're winning. But if their 9 things aren't bothering you that much, you just got to deal with the one thing that's an issue.
Right.
And so then it's like the single target removal, it really is, it's not about getting to parity with them. It's just dealing with the thing that's going to kill you now. And and single target removal should be when it's going to kill you now. And that's why you want your single target removal typically to be instant speed.
Right.
Because you want to be able to deal with it when it's about to kill
Yeah,
you.
sorcery speed removal to me is really not worth playing in most cases.
It's definitely a challenge.
A board wipe may be your exception.
Like
There are very
Kindred
few.
Dominance, where it destroys everybody else's stuff but doesn't touch yours. His
Yeah.
thing he's talking about.
Yeah.
What's the one that you kills all the creatures where you draw a card for each creature it killed?
Yeah, I'm not-
And it has cycling on it, so you could do 2 damage. I think you could cycle it for 3, and it'll do 2 damage to everything. Like stuff like that. Sorcery speed, although that's instant speed, that cycling
Right.
ability. Those are okay, but typically you want instant speed.
And the other thing I'm cautioning people. So let's go back to Nadu for a minute, right? Nadu is changing Magic.
Yeah.
I hope people aren't playing it in casual decks or trying to, because it's a very. I have one built for tonight's CDH tournament, and I plan on burning it, never seeing it again.
Yeah.
But it can just sit there and do its own thing for 30 minutes, 40 minutes.
It's
the whole game.
solitaire. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not fun for anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully the Commanders Council will ban this. I'm very optimistic.
Depends on
I'm
how many
pessimistic about it, but I'm hopeful. That
So
I'm
everybody,
wrong.
if you play with them, make sure you play Nadu so that they ban it.
Right. But because of things like that, let's not even talk about that. You still have the Ulamog, the Defiler, right?
Yeah.
I now, in all my blue decks that are mono blue, I am running every single counter triggered ability card there is. Every single one. Stifle, Tails End, what's the other? There's another one like Stifle. It's for a mana, but it only does. Anyway, I run as many as I can. Like I've got.
I mean, that's tough though, because are you going to hold up 2 of those?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Because
Because
here's the
almost
thing.
all those effects now, you're typically setting up to double them when they're played.
Right.
So
But-
you got to have 2 stifle
Right.
effects now.
But even if you don't, stifling one of them at least moderates.
yeah,
what's
it's
going
better than none.
on.
Yeah.
And some of those cards like Tails End, they can counter a spell too, or they can do other things. So it's not just sitting dead in your hand.
Okay.
The other thing is, even if you're not playing against those things, have some fun. Stifle a fetch land. Watch
Yes.
somebody's reaction.
That is fun.
But I do think because of the way that Magic is going, stifle effects are going to be a much bigger deal. And there are things, even in green, Emerald Dragon has an adventure that you can use to stifle an ability. There is a Simic card that stifles ability. There are more things in some other colors that do it. And I would encourage you to have at least a couple of those in your decks when you go out in the wild, because there are so many things that are a problem.
Yeah.
A dockside, stifle a dockside. Most people, when they play dockside and nobody counters it, they think they are home free. The look on their face when you stifle it is priceless. But
and then
I do
they
think
blink
that
it
more
or
and
flicker
more,
it, and you have to do it again.
yeah, no, you just copy it and do it yourself.
Yeah.
I do think more and more stifle effects are going to be important and a major part of the game if you want to stop this stuff.
Yeah, with how many triggered abilities that they're creating now, I definitely think that the instant speed interaction is getting more and more important in Magic.
So I'm playing 15. You're playing 10.
20 to 25.
Goodness. Okay.
Well, because he's golly day. Sorry,
Wow.
he's countering everything.
Okay.
Alcohol this morning is catching up
Yeah.
to me.
Have another.
But yeah, I mean, he's playing blue. So when you think about blue, counter spells is interaction. I mean, he's running a lot of he has a whole deck about not countering but countering. Like, you know.
Yep.
So I see his point, like, and I think that's part of the thing where it comes down to this. It's really hard to give a number, I think, because of what colors you're playing.
Yeah.
And I think what your goal of your deck is. Like, if the goal of your deck, like your, can't counter deck is to, I'm just going to bounce your stuff. I'm going to keep you from playing it.
Well, he plays control decks a lot. Is what
Right.
You're saying.
So
Yeah, so I'm more of a control player. So I probably am going to run more than your
your
average.
Which makes sense. I think were we just talking about it at my house or were we talking about it on a podcast? I can't tell now. The two things mesh together, but
That's why he's sitting here in his underwear.
I have to play a lot of mana because I got to play 2 cards to get through his counter spells, sometimes 3. And so I just tend to go really big mana and just make him have it. But I do have to, in my meta, think about Duncan and his controlled decks. And whatever meta you're in, you have to think about it too, because how much interaction you have may be dependent upon what the other people are doing.
But the other thing, just going back real quick to Stifle, when somebody says, "Are you going to pay 2 for my Smothering Chive when you draw?" No, but I'll pay 1 for a Stifle. That's a lot easier to pay for.
You're paying 1 and a card.
Sure.
Yeah, because
And
you're now
But
using
the
a
payoff
card.
is the look on that person's face.
Okay, yes. If you're doing it for the meme, I support that completely. If you're doing it as of a good play, I'm not sure it meets that criteria.
But anyway, so we're all saying you should run it.
Yeah, you should have interaction. You should have ways to stop people via
Once
removal.
again, Jeff is on one side.
No,
He's Sloan's on one side. Jeff's in the middle this time. That's weird. And I'm at the other end. But even in white and black decks, by the way, I still run a lot of single target.
Well, but
removal.
again,
Of course.
those are heavy control colors still.
Yeah.
Like, you're just
I mean, that's 3
You're just saying blue differently.
Let me
You're just
say
saying
this.
blue differently.
Even in my mono green deck, I run 10 single target removals. Now, the board wipes are a little different there, but you can count like Bane of Progress kind of as a board wipe. I don't know what the one is. It creates 4/4s and then attacks everything else. I forget what it's called.
Oh, the Eldrazi. No, not Eldrazi. Azuri.
Azuri Predation.
Yeah,
Is that it?
Something Progress. Azuri's Progress. Or
I don't know. It's something like that.
Yeah,
but
whatever it is.
It's a little harder for board
Right.
wipes in mono green.
But I mean, and each thing has its own thing it does better.
Right.
But, even in those colors, I do.
heck yeah.
In red, I run every single, when I can, every counter spell. I run the Tibalt's Trickery, Deflecting Swat,
Pyroblast.
Pyroblast. What's the other one like Pyroblast?
Pyro something.
It's fire. So,
And I
Red
think
Elemental Blast.
Johnny said
Red
earlier
Elemental
too, it also is theme. So like
Yeah.
there are decks where like it's just not my theme to have quite as much removal. My removal is people removal. And
Right.
sometimes sometimes that happens. But almost all my decks have single target removal because I like to win.
But what's aggravating you today, Jeff? Let's go there.
Well, all right. So this is gonna give away the extent of my nerdiness and geekishness, but being a nerd or owning a game store is not an excuse for bad decor. And I'll go way down the rabbit trail. So when we moved from modernity to post-modernity, it allowed for using toys and pop culture as decor. And so you can do that. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't have different types of fabrics and textures and colors and have some greenery and have a little bit of wood in your area, that you shouldn't think about the feng shui of it all and how it all fits together and flows and what you're trying to accomplish with your decor. Because you go into some card shops and you're like, this is just kind of dirty and grimy, or it's just all functional. It's all about functionality, and there's no beauty to it. There's like some posters on the wall. And I just put a little bit more effort into it. The decor does matter. It affects people. I know we talked about this a little. Duncan might have a different opinion. We'd love to hear it. But whether you think it does or doesn't, it does affect you.
So he's
affects how
basically
you
saying
feel.
is whether you agree with me or not, I'm right.
Well,
That's
so
what he just said.
You can have a different opinion on how much decor you have. All I'm saying is, even if you don't care that much about it, it does have an effect.
So I will agree with you slightly.
Yeah.
I do think that there are a lot of shops, and I'll call out Mystic Forge here because I give them plenty of props. I'll point out when they don't.
Yeah.
Their walls are barren.
Yes.
There's a few posters up. There's posters up for games that like started to come out, like one called Vanguard. They have the poster up because the guy came around to the shops and he was actually active, but that card game was hot garbage.
And
the
it's
art
just
was really
still
cool,
there, yeah.
but the nobody plays it and
Right.
poster's still up. But they have all these old sets. They have the posters up, like I'm talking like from 2 years ago when they first opened and stuff. But not, I mean, there's so much bare wall. There was a problem with sound in the beginning, and they put up 4. I don't even think it's 4. I think it's 3 sound panels. You know, those egg crate. I'm like, what's that
to
do?
absorb some
Yeah,
sound.
I'm like, that. What's
when it happens to reflect off of those specific panels.
Yeah.
Yes.
So their walls are barren. They could probably, but they have some big stuff planned. I do know that. So they have some
That's
really
great.
cool. They're
That's
going to
great.
have a whole wall that is sculpted to look like rock with a cave entrance.
That's great. Yeah.
mean, that's pretty cool.
Do something.
So that's where I'm saying, if you do all the cool posters and your walls are covered and it's kind of nerdy, to me, that's fine. I don't care about wood. I don't care about silk. I definitely don't care about greenery. In fact, if you have greenery in your shop, if you have plants and stuff, I'm probably going to be less inclined to like it.
That's wild. So to give you an idea of how, because this really is something that aggravates me, I had to have a procedure and they put me under. And apparently when the procedure was over and they were, they wake you up and you're drugged up. So you just say wild stuff. Apparently I was very upset the entire time about the aesthetics of the different room. And so I would tell the nurses and my wife about how the aesthetics weren't pleasing the entire time. So it's something that is near and dear to my heart. It is something that aggravates me.
So do
I
you
just think
care
we
at
could
all
do a better
about
job.
decor when it comes to where you play?
I could care less, dude. If you have what I want, I'll walk in and buy and I leave. I don't want to talk to people to begin with, so having less things in there so there's less people
Well, let's
that are there.
pretend you're going there to play.
Sure.
Okay. Do you care?
Could care less.
Yeah, exactly. Me either. Now, what I do care about is the table. I care about the table. Mystic Forge has these, guess you call them table condoms. They're like a plastic tablecloth.
They're table covers. There's
Yeah,
a word for
I
them.
think
It exists.
No, but
I don't know
these
what-
have elastic.
I don't know
They
what
have-
you're doing with these tables,
just-
but I'm very concerned now.
Because of how large they are, too.
Oh
Like,
my
but
gosh.
I'm
Anyways.
torn about those because I like the idea, but they slide. They kind of bunch up and they slide around.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah,
I've
I
been
think
to other places where they
That
have
is not
the
a
big
good thing
mat
to have in a.
The table
down.
mat. It's an
I kind of
actual
like that
TTRPG,
better,
but mat.
but the problem then is you put your mat on top of it, and now you're playing like 3 inches off.
Well,
the
it's
table.
meant to. You're not supposed to put your mat. You're supposed to use that one. But the
Don't you
problem
tell
is
me
if
what
you
to
leave
do.
it out the whole time and people put their cups on it and it gets stained, it's like I don't want to put my cards on this. Like,
Yeah.
So I do get
I mean,
that.
there's a fun, but when it's a bare table, I don't know. I do care a little bit about what's on the table.
I think
but
the reason why the table covers are a little bit better is because they could remove them, have them cleaned, and then put them back on.
I think you mean table condom.
No, those words will not come out of my mouth in that order. So the table covers though are nice because they do actually like hold the corners. I know what you're talking about because they're, they stretch over the table, so they stay on the table. It's not like they're sliding off or anything. But yeah, I mean, I do think that you need to have the play area where people are going to sit down and play needs to be nice. If you have displays,
Yeah.
make sure they're nice.
I will also
and
say
then
when it's like the
you know.
tables are beat up and stuff and
off
not
balance or
they
bowed.
wobbly or whatever. That's
Which
not-
functionality is good.
Yeah.
I'm just suggesting.
But I don't
for
care
those
about-
people that are
I
listening.
don't care about wood and silk and cloth and
I don't think I said
definitely prefer no greenery.
silk is not something.
Light is probably something to be avoided. Natural light, let's get that out of there.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, silk is not something I'm suggesting.
I like
use
the
either.
blacked out windows. Shut us off from the outside world. We don't know what time it is. We come out at 3 a.m.
Yeah, it should be like a casino. They're pumping oxygen in to keep you awake, to keep you there.
Which, by
All
the way, we
windows are
still got to
blocked out.
get it worked out, our gambling magic.
Oh yeah, we got to do
Poker
that.
magic. We gotta
Yeah,
figure
but
that
wow,
out.
that just saddened me a little bit. All that blacked out window and stuff. Like, for heaven's sakes, folks.
Well, good. So I did my job. Moving on. That doesn't do what you think that it does. Tapped and attacking.
Right.
Things that enter tapped and attacking. This happens all the time.
Yeah.
Somebody has something come in tapped and attacking. That creature has a when this creature attacks ability, and they say, so I'm going to do this. No, you're not. Shut your mouth and move on. It's already past attacking. It comes in tapped and attacking.
And that can be good and bad. Sometimes it's good that trigger doesn't happen. Like in Kalia, you play some creatures that the attacking part is really bad, and you're avoiding it.
Well, that could be.
Yep.
Yeah, there's that.
Masters
Kalia's
of
whole
Cruelty,
deck is
I believe,
Kalia's
is a
whole
card.
deck idea is basically that, where you want to avoid having to pay the cost, and they get to come in and hit for free, and you know, without.
Yeah, and there
having
are
to.
Also benefits. You do not have to pay for propaganda for those creatures. You
Right,
do not-
because
yeah.
they're already tapped and attacking. They're not declared attackers. So yeah, the key difference is, if we go back to that sheet that we came up with that goes through the phases when we talked about the phases of a turn, the declare attacker step is where attacking triggers happen.
Yeah, when this creature attacks.
When
or
this
when a
creature attacks, i.e., when you're declaring it as an attacker. When creatures attack, when your creatures are attacking, you get to do this.
No, that's now you're in the second one. You said attacking.
Right. So when your creatures are declared as attackers is one thing, and then when your creatures are attacking is another thing.
Right.
That's the next step. So
Attacking creatures you control.
Right.
That would apply to the tapped ones that come in
That
tapped
are-
and attacking.
Can I read this card real quick? Because I think it illustrates it really well. But Masters of Cruelty, which is a mean card, 3 black and red. It's a creature demon. First strike and death touch. But it says Masters of Cruelties can only attack alone. Whenever Master of Cruelties attacks a player and isn't blocked, that player's life total becomes 1. Masters of Cruelties assigns no combat damage as combat.
Can you read that part again, though, about the paragraph about 1?
When Masters of Cruelties attacks a player and isn't blocked.
Okay, so that won't work.
no, what he's saying is the
Yeah,
part where
well-
it says it has to attack alone. So Kalia attacks, and then you can put him in tapped and attacking
Right,
with
but
Kalia.
if it says when he attacks, I know it does work, so they must have eroded it. But when he attacks means when you swing him. So if he didn't do that, according to
know.
the way you read that, it would not bring a player's life total to
I
1.
will look
I thought
at
he was
it.
pointing out the first part specifically.
I know, but I think I caught him on the second part. But I am pretty sure it works because it's a common card. But I think it is eroded or there's some
Yeah, they might have
nuance
eroded
to
Well,
it.
that is a topic we're going to talk about at some point here.
Yep.
So,
future.
but yeah, the comes in tapped and attacking is skipping the declare attacker step. So if you have stuff that happens when you declare attackers, those things coming in tapped and attacking do not trigger it. But if you have stuff that does stuff for attacking creatures, those tapped and attacking creatures would get that because that's usually a board state effect. So
Right.
yeah, there is a distinction there. It does happen a lot, especially with newer players, because again, wording is important.
Yeah, so it actually
So-
does work the way it's written because the rulings 415 2013 and there don't seem to be any corrections to it. An ability that triggers when something attacks and isn't blocked triggers in the declare blockers step after blockers are
Okay.
declared.
So there you go. There's the
So
nuance.
it's
Yeah,
not,
That's
because it's
so.
the
So you got to
blocking
watch
part.
the wording too, because it says if attacks and not blocked, then it's looking at the blocking stage, not the
Right, the
attacking
attacking
stage.
stage.
But like I said, I knew it worked, but the way you read it,
And the
sounded
way
like
it
it
works
shouldn't.
basically, as Johnny had said, it is because you're attacking with 2 things, you basically drop someone to 1, call you hits, and now they're dead.
right?
So you just kill someone in 1 shot.
Right.
Out of nowhere.
Yep.
So.
So that's a common one I see all the time. Veteran players sometimes even won't think about it, and they're
Yeah,
like,
they
okay,
just-
and you're like, no, and you're like, oh yeah. So it's something everybody has done, but just so you know. So let's move on to our main topic. May not feel like our main topic, but Assassin's Creed.
Right.
What do we think? What do we like? What are we looking at?
I mean, I'll go first. I like how they did a good job with creating these cards and having them make sense. That's always one thing that is nervous when they're melding 2 worlds together, as it were. They did a good job with Lord of the Rings. I felt like they did a pretty good job with Transformers. They did a pretty good job with some of these other ones. And Assassin's Creed's no different. I feel like they did a pretty good job with it. I played the first two 100% of them, the first two Assassin's Creed games. So I'm very familiar with some of these cards that are from those two games. The later ones about the Revolutionary War and the Pirate Run, stuff like that, I didn't get to play them as much because I was in college at the time. So I wasn't really around when they were coming out. So, but I think they did a good job with it. Is this going to change Magic as we know it? No, it's not. It's not like they're not doing anything groundbreaking. They're not doing anything world changing. I think they added some really good mechanics. I think they added some really good cards. I think they did some really good reprints, and I like a lot of the arts that they did.
And the flavor is excellent.
I think the flavor is great. So I think as a set overall, they did a great job with the set for what it is. Is it going to, like I said, change Magic as we? No, it's a good set for Magic. It's a great thematic set and a great set, well done with the art and illustration, I think. So that's my thoughts on it.
Jeff?
Well, one of the cool cards that I think they added, which is a fun card, is called Templar Knight. It's 1 in a white, human knight. It's you can have any number of these in your deck. So now they've added that for white. And you can pay 1 white, tap 5 untapped attacking creatures you control named Templar Knight. Search your library for a legendary artifact, put it onto the battlefield. That can be very, very powerful. So seeing what people will do now with this, any number of this card in your deck will be fun. There's another one. What is it? Eagle Vision here. So it's 4 in a blue, but free running. That's where we get into that new mechanic,
right?
Which says if you deal damage, you can now cast it for its
well,
free
you have to
running
deal
cost.
damage with certain things. It's either free running is you have to deal damage with to a player with an assassin or your commander.
Right.
So it's very specific. But they added commander in there, which I thought was good on them to encourage these cards to be put in more than just assassin decks.
Yeah, and I think you're 100% right. But it's draw 3 cards for 1 in a blue. I mean, that's pretty good, and that's an uncommon card. So those are the two I'll talk about, and both those cards are uncommon.
Well, we weren't talking about cards yet, but I let you go. What's your overall thoughts on the set?
The set itself.
I wouldn't buy it. I think it's okay. It's kind of cool. I don't know that I need any of the cards from this set, but it's all right. So I just don't really care.
So
in my opinion, they could have not had this set, and we have more time between sets. That would have been wonderful.
Right. Well, here my thought is, there's probably not a single card that I'm like, oh, I gotta go get that.
Mm-hmm.
They're just, I may get some of them. I may not be able to help myself, and I may buy some of the set just because I am a cardboard crack addict.
Yeah.
But for me, I don't care. I'm excited for Sloan because Sloan loves Assassin's Creed.
Yeah,
he's excited for this set. He wants to build assassins.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for him and people like him. That for them this will be cool. I think it's a neat idea. I also am like, why didn't they just make it standard? I guess maybe they don't want the Universes Beyond being standard.
Maybe.
But they're doing Bloomborough, which is very weird anyway. That's going to be standard.
But that's technically, I guess, inside the. That's not like a game or
no, it's
outside
not.
lore.
It's just adjacent. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not, what is it?
I guess you can write that off as
Watership
lore
Down.
of Magic.
Yeah.
But because this is technically not in the world of Magic, right? So
yeah, but I mean, they put Transformers and Brothers War.
We don't
but
know,
they did say those weren't standard. It was just weird.
We don't know what kind of agreement they had to make to get the licensing either.
I don't know.
Maybe there had to be certain cards that had certain.
But my point is just
value.
this set is not beyond standard power. I don't think there's anything breaking in here. They did put a couple of the big swords, the old swords.
Yeah,
in here.
so Sword of Feast and Famine, Sword of Light and Shadow they reprinted, and the art they did for them I thought was pretty cool.
Right, but
again, very
maybe
thematic.
they didn't want that type of stuff to be in standard. That might be the reason why.
With some of the reprints they did, that would make sense. So the
they
main
didn't
card,
want Leonardo da Vinci to be standard.
right? Which he's one of the ones I'm going to hit on. But so the main card for me,
You're
going to
hit on Leonardo da Vinci.
Already did.
Do you need a table condom when you do that?
Jeez Louise, this show's going off the rails really quickly today. So the main card that drew me into wanting to get this set, and out of the three of us, I'm the only one who actually bought the box for it.
So far.
I mean, Duncan will probably cave at some point and buy one because, like you said, he's a cardboard
I'll get the
crack addict.
DTs and I'll have to.
Yeah. So Ezio is the main character from the Assassin's Creed stories. He was in the first one. He was the main guy. He's the reason why I really want this. So he's 1 in a black, legendary creature, human assassin. He has menace. Assassin spells you cast have free running. And then whenever Ezio deals combat damage to a player, you may pay Wooburg. If that player has 10 or less life, when you do, that player loses the game. So this is going to be my first 5-color commander I'll ever build is him. And he's the reason why I wanted to buy this, because every 5-color commander, I couldn't really find one that I liked. And I was like, I don't like Morphon is the one that a lot of people built as a 5-color commander because you can make him themed however you want to. And it's like, oh, well, he's an assassin's deck, but Morphon's the commander. It's like, well, no, Morphon is not an assassin. I get it. He's changeling. He's technically an assassin. But it's like, no, I want my assassin commander to be an assassin. I want my dragon commander to be a dragon. You know what? But all the other 5-color commanders, I just didn't really like feel called to him to really want to play him. But this guy, like I saw him, I was like, oh, this would be fun to do.
But
like,
could you imagine Morphon sneaking up on you? Like just hiding behind that incredibly large tree?
right?
Or an incredibly small tree. Bugs Bunny style.
Yeah.
So I mean, so he's the reason why I really got interested in the set. And I started looking through, and I was really following it pretty heavily. He is going to be the one that hopefully I pull, and I really want the full art version of him that goes with the 5 lands because I think that would be cool to have the portrait.
That was a cool picture you sent.
Yeah, because they built it like they did with some of the other sets where you connect the lands like they did in Lord of the Rings. You connect some of the cards and it creates a giant portrait.
Yep.
So they did that for this set too, which is pretty cool. The other card that everyone is, a lot of people are saying is potentially going to be an issue is this Leonardo da Vinci one. 2 in a blue, legendary creature, human artificer. Pay 3 blue until end of turn. Thopters you control have base power and toughness XX, where X is the number of cards in your hand. Pay 2 in a blue, tap them, draw a card, then discard a card. If the discarded card was an artifact card, exile it from your graveyard. If you do, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 0/2 Thopter artifact creature with flying in addition to its other types. He's a 3/3.
I might build him.
So the reason why he's the
You
reason why
just said it might be a problem
Yeah.
for Magic, and you're
That's-
like, I'm
yeah.
going to build them.
right,
It's say
and,
less.
and it's mono blue. So
Say less.
Yeah.
You had me at that.
Yeah. So
Unbelievable.
the whole reason why, and I've watched a couple of other people who have gotten these cards already and played them. One of them built this as a commander. Yeah, when you can drop like 12 drop artifacts for free and they do crazy things and
Like
they're
Steel
top.
Colossus who?
Yeah, right. Like it's kind of gross. Like, and that's essentially what this guy is doing. He's letting you cheat out these really strong artifacts that cost a lot of mana for free. They ETB, so if they're ETB ones, they still get that trigger. And then on top of that, now they're 0/2 Thopters, with flying. So then you can pump them up, and you have it's like it's kind of crazy. So he's the one that a lot of people are like he might be an issue when he drops. Like a lot of people I feel like might figure out a way to break him, which it's not really hard. I mean, just read his ability. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Just read the card.
Yeah, read the card. You'll figure it out real quick.
Also,
and then,
there are serialized cards in this set,
right. So,
which are fun chase cards.
I mean, they're in almost every set.
so
They were
that
in
was
the last one too.
Yes.
But the one before that, I don't think they were. Were they?
Murders at Karlov?
Were there some in there? I know
Yeah.
there weren't in Caverns. Were there?
Yeah.
There was in Caverns
Yeah.
too.
Oh, yeah. The Mana Crypt serialized. Those are crazy money.
Okay.
so that's one of
I think
the other
there were
ones.
Anyway, now you have me questioning.
But there's a lot of characters that they did from the series. That's pretty cool. They did the pirate one. They did the Revolutionary War guy. So they did a lot of the different characters and stuff. The other cards that I thought were pretty cool, there's the Animus, which is a key part of the whole game. That's what the whole series is based off of. It's a legendary artifact, 2 mana. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target legendary creature card from a graveyard with a memory counter on it. And then you can just tap it until your next turn. Target legendary creature you control becomes a copy of target creature and exile with the memory counter on it. Activate only as a sorcery. So basically, you can exile the good cards out of people's graveyards that you want your guy to be, and then tap them. So this is kind of like a Lazav effect that we built, except this is on an artifact, legendary artifact, and it doesn't cost you anything to do it. You just tap it, and you get to make one of your legendary creatures.
And that's great flavor on the Animus. The cool thing that we did, almost all these cards do exactly what they do in the game.
Right.
Like Haystack. It's awesome flavor. Weird. If you don't know the game, you're like, Haystack? How is that a powerful card? But if you've played the game, you know why it is.
Right. And then another one that they did that I thought was really cool. I brought up to
hold on.
Duncan.
He mentioned Haystack. Let's at least tell people.
So Haystack is 1 and a white. It's an artifact. You can pay 2, tap it. Target creature you control phases out.
So that's good protection.
Right. It's a great protection card.
Repeatable.
So Smoke Bomb is another one that I saw that I thought was cool. It's an artifact with flash, which not a lot of those. Most of them are equipments, I think, that have flash. But artifact with flash, pay 3. All creatures have Shroud. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Smoke Bombs. When you do, target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. So I told Duncan, I was like, that'd be really funny if someone threw this in a deck against you on Nadu, because his whole Nadu deck is you want to target your stuff to make it do things. Well, if you give everything Shroud, he can't do anything.
Yeah.
So it's just like he spends a whole turn, he puts a land down, and he passes because he can't do anything because everything in his deck targets.
See, I told you Stifle's important.
So this is like a really cool way to... It's funny because you're kind of protecting everyone's stuff, but you also could be kind of like screwing them at the same time. So I thought that was a cool
Make
card.
sure you use a table condom.
Yeah, make sure. Yeah, if you're going to. And then they added a couple of equipments in here that I thought were cool. They added Hidden Blade, which of course is a huge theme of the Assassin's game. Pay 2. It has flash. When Hidden Blade enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control. If the creature is an assassin, it gains Death Touch until end of turn. Equip creature gets +1/+0 and has first strike. Equip is 2. But the two cool equipments I think that they added, which are super fun because they're based off of outside lore, is Excalibur, Sword of Eden. It's 12 mana artifact equipment. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is a total value of total mana value of historic permanents you control. So it could cost you 0 potentially. And then it's equip creature gets +10/+0, has vigilance, equip legendary creature 2. So you could essentially turn your creature into a +10/+0 with vigilance for 2 mana because it costs you free. And then the other one was they built Mjolnir Stormhammer.
Yeah, that was Colossus Hammer, basically.
Well, the downside with Colossus Hammer is that it's cheap to get out, but it's expensive to equip. So
except for most people with Colossus Hammer are playing it in a deck where it's free.
Yeah, they're going to cheat
equip.
it onto something. So
which you'll probably do with this too.
Right.
You'll avoid that 2 cost.
Yeah. When Mjolnir enters the battlefield, attach it to target legendary creature you control. Whenever equipped creature attacks, tap target creature defending player controls and put a stun counter on it. Then Mjolnir deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of tapped creatures that opponent controls.
And how much does that one cost to get out?
4 to cast it, 4 to equip. But when it comes out the first time, you auto equip it to a legendary creature. So it's a free equip. So I think they did a really good job with thematically with the game. Cards that make sense on why they're in there and their abilities compared to what the game does. They added some historic stuff like Leonardo da Vinci, Cleopatra's in there, which is also characters from the game.
And some people are very excited that now I think there were already some historical figures from somewhere, maybe Doctor Who, that were in Magic, and now there's more.
Yeah, so
They're now
I
a
think
part of
Socrates
Magic.
is another one that's in here.
Yep.
Yeah, and historic, by the way, artifacts, legendary sagas are historic.
Yeah.
Also, one thing to be careful of on Excalibur that makes it different than Colossus Hammer is you can only equip it to a legendary creature.
Right. Yeah, if you pay 2, equip it to a legendary creature.
Well,
Unless-
there are ways you can get around that.
Probably, but
Well,
It's still a
there's
challenge.
the knight that I had. There's I think it was a creature that said equipment you have equipped knight 0.
Yep.
So it would get around that. You know,
Yeah, I
so
think that would
there's
work.
there's other things too.
Yeah.
right.
But so yeah, I mean overall very flavorful set. There's some neat things in it.
Like,
Jeff and I are not excited about it. Sloan is.
And the
happy
main
for
reason
him.
why I'm excited about it is just because, again, I liked this game as a kid, and you know, I always thought Assassin's Creed was, when it first came out, was like a groundbreaking game. They did such a good job with it, and it was crazy cool. So overall, I'm excited about the set, not because it's overpowered or has crazy powerful cards in it, just mainly because I like the theme of the set, and I think they did a good job with making it. So
Yep. I think it's going to be good for some people. I don't think it's going to be groundbreaking, like you said, but it's neat.
Yeah.
If
I think
if
enough-
they had Commander decks, I might have bought them.
yeah,
just
I
to
kind of
have
wish they
them,
would
but
have
they
made
didn't.
commander decks for this one, because I think you very easily could have made some really cool commander decks out of these cards. But yeah, I definitely think they did a good job with it.
Yep. But any tips for beginners?
Yeah, so we were talking about it, and one of the things that you can do in Magic is something called, you can take a mulligan. So kind of just wanted to go over mulliganing real quick and what the advantages of it is and when you should do it. So the actual ruling for mulligan, I have it pulled up here, is in Magic the Gathering, a mulligan is a second chance to draw cards at the beginning of the game. Players can only mulligan after all players have made a declaration to or not to mulligan. Okay. In the current rules, also in a multiplayer game, you get one free mulligan. So everyone draws their cards, starting with the person who goes first, and in turn order, you decide by the rules, hey, I'm going to mulligan. Are you going to mulligan? You all each decide. Once you do that, you get one free one, so you get to draw 7 again and keep those 7 after you shuffle. After you mulligan that free time, if you decide to mulligan again, you would shuffle, put the cards back in, draw 7 more, and then you would put one of them to the bottom of your deck, and you would only get to start with 6, and then you proceed to do that until you decide when to stop, and that's how many cards you get to keep in your hand. In casual format, at least for us, we don't do it by the turn order thing. We kind of just say, hey, I'm going to mulligan, and we do it, so that way we're not wasting time.
Right.
Most casual players are going to be okay with that. No one really cares about doing it in turn order. The only thing I will say is wait till everyone has decided that they're done mulliganing before you start making plays, because you don't want to start doing things and then someone's like, oh no, I'm going to get a different hand that has removal now real quick. Give me a second. So make sure everyone's actually ready to start playing before you move forward after mulligans. The other thing is too, in casual mulliganing, for the most part, we always say, as long as you have 3 lands in your hand, that's a playable hand for the most part. So after you mulligan once or twice, if you still don't have 3 lands, we'll let you keep staying at 7, at least in our play group, until you get 3 lands.
Depending on the decks we're playing.
Yeah. If we're playing, again, more casual. If we're playing more of our competitive stuff, and we're playing higher end stuff, we will stick to the actual mulligan rule. Like, hey, you get 1 free one. Then after that free one, you got to go down to 6, then 5, then 4. In competitive scenes, the biggest reason why people are mulliganing is because they want to have an opening hand that lets them basically get their whole engine going, so that by turn 3, they're trying to close out the game, turn 3, turn 4, hopefully. So a lot of times you'll see people that will mulligan in competitive play down to 4 cards because they just need certain cards in their hand to start the game off right. Casual play, you're probably not going to see that as much. It's more just, do I have enough mana to get my commander out on curve or slightly before curve?
And a lot of times in casual play, you'll just let them draw back to 7.
Right.
It's not a big deal.
So it's not the end of the world. But yeah, when you go to mulligan, I mean, basically your ideal starting hand, for the most part, you should have at least 3 lands. If you have a multicolored deck, you should have at least some way to get most of your colors, if not all of them, by the appropriate turn. So if you're playing a 5-color commander deck, hopefully by turn 5, you'll have a source of each color able to get to you, whether that's through ramp, putting lands down, artifact ramp, or sorcery ramp to go get lands. So ideally, you want at least 3 lands in your hand, and then a way to go get more land if needed. And then also you want to see a turn progression. So I have something to do on turn 1, I have something to do on turn 2, I have something to do on turn 3, essentially. So when you go to start playing Magic and you draw your first 7 cards, try to look at them, make sure you're following those rules. I know that Jeff and Duncan are both going to say something about me not following that rule. I usually, if I got at least 1 land and 1 way to get out more mana, I'll probably keep it. And by the grace of the Magic gods, the majority of the time I'm okay. Sometimes I do sit there and just kind of twiddle my thumbs until the game's over. But
this is a classic example of do what I say, not what I do.
But for the most part, if I am playing in a more competitive setting, I will make sure I have enough mana to get my deck going. And a lot of my higher powered decks are low curves anyways, so I can function off of 3 mana.
And the thing I would also caution, don't skip your mulligan because you're trying to go fast and you won't want people waiting on you. They're going to be waiting on you playing anything sometimes. You know what I mean? You're just going to be passing turn, not even participating. It's better to be a part of the game.
Yeah, most people actually will be more upset with you for keeping a bad hand because you felt bad for trying to make other people wait for you to mulligan than they would if you mulligan. Like, they would have been like, why are you keeping that? Like, and then they're like, well, can I just kill you so you're sitting here not doing anything because you're dead, instead of because you decided to keep 1 land with the other 6 cards were 8 drop mana spells. Like,
so executing proper mulligans is pretty important.
Yeah.
thing to learn when you're playing Commander. It can definitely make or break your games. So that's a good one there. Real quick before we wrap up, I just wanted to mention Magic just announced the Foundations set. They got rid of Core set back in 2021, but back in 2015 they brought it back after getting rid of it before. And I just think it's ridiculous that they're calling this Foundations. It's like they're like, well, we can't call it Core. What's another word for Core? Oh, a foundation. All right, this is Foundations. It's not Core. But anyway, it's basically going to be another Core set.
That's the world we live in today with just new words.
Yeah.
So just something to keep in mind that's coming out there in November. We don't know a lot of details, but you're going to get some good reprints. The art looks like they've got some full art stuff that's really cool. There's going to be full art lands, so it'll have some value even for that. More to come on that, but I just thought that was neat to mention. Thanks for listening to us today. I want to thank Jack May at Info Programs for editing and producing. If you want to reach out to us, you can reach out at cast@commanderspod.com. You can head to our Patreon at patreon.com/commanderspod. If you would like to support us there, we would be more than pleased if you would do so.
Yeah.
You can check out our website at commanderspod.com, and you can also kill Andrew first.
If you can.